Hi, and welcome to another episode of Bible Students Online. And this is part 2 of my testimony from Jehovah's Witness to the Bible students. And I believe where I last left off was when my wife at the time and I attended our first Bible student meeting with the Jersey City Bible students, Associate Bible Students of Jersey City. They were, I may have mentioned this before, but they were at that point the oldest Bible student ecclesia or congregation in the world, having been formed in the late 1880s, I believe. They closed their doors a little less than 10 years ago, as they got a little smaller. But then at the time, unfortunately, um, there were 3 elders in the class, and eventually I left and relocated. Another brother passed away, and then the other one retired. And so there was no one left to really lead the class, and so they decided that it would be best to just close their doors. It was kind of sad because they had a very long, rich history, but you know, as the Lord said, we must decrease and increase. So decrease on the earth and increase in heaven. So we had just left the Jehovah's Witness congregation, and we headed up to Union, New Jersey, which was the class where they met. They met at a Masonic hall, which is not so unusual. I know people think that Russell was a Mason and, high-ranking 33rd degree Mason and whatnot, but, that's all been debunked. The only reason why many Bible students meet in Masonic halls is because, first of all, it's available. I think they only use the place maybe once a week, if that. And it's usually one evening during the week. The rest of the time it's laying there empty. So, they make a little extra money by renting out the facilities for whoever may need it. The Jersey City class met in the afternoons about 1:30, 2 o'clock. There was another group, the Christadelphians, who met in the mornings. So we would usually pass each other as we were coming in and they were coming out. And so I walked in, and Chester Wazalewski, who was a deacon, met us at the door. He was a bit confused because normally people just don't walk into a Bible student meeting. Because Bible students usually meet in rented facilities or they meet in private homes, it's not unlikely that someone's going to just walk in unless they know exactly where they're going. And so we walked in, and he looked at us and he goes, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Is this the Bible students?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "Then we're in the right place." So he brought us in. We sat down in a little section there, and it was a big class at the time. There were over 35 people there. A lot of different families with kids. And so we sat down, and we just kind of, listened in. They were having a volume study, and by volume study, that means that they were using C.T. Russell's Studies in the Scriptures. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what it was that they were studying at the time, but Chester came and he gave us a couple of volumes and told us where we were. And we had our first hour of study. And interestingly, because I was familiar with the volumes, having read them, I was able to raise my hand and freely comment and give my thoughts. And then afterwards, after the first meeting, there's usually a half-hour intermission where we go into the other room where the kitchen is, and there's usually coffee and snacks and whatnot, and a little fellowship. And then we have a second round of study, and that's it for the Sunday meetings. So after the first study, a few of them came up to us and were asking us who we were, and and we told them our story, and so they were quite happy to see us, and so we attended the study there, and then we I remember afterwards we would usually stick around after the meeting was over, just dialoguing and asking questions, and oftentimes on those Sundays there'd be like an extra meeting, kind of like a question meeting, and usually one or two would stay behind to talk with us, but then after a while the whole class just sat around and started answering our questions. Eventually after that, I remember when I was still working at the Dawn, there was a sister there, Sister Alpha, who told us that, we have a meeting. She met with another class, a Patterson class, and she said, hey, we have another meeting in my house on, I think it was Mondays. She says, if you'd like to come by, we're doing volume 2, which is, I believe, the book on chronology. It was either volume 2 or volume 3, I can't remember. It's been so long. So we're like, okay, fine. So we got her address, and then it was quite intense because let me just show you share with you the schedule that we had, our weekly schedule. Now, on Sundays, we would go out to the Kingdom Hall, and we would have the public discourse and the Watchtower study. And as soon as that brother said amen, boom, we were out the door. We drove for 5-10 miles to Union, New Jersey, and we met with the Bible students, and we had 2 studies of an hour each, an intermission between each study, and then oftentimes we would stay behind and just discuss more things. On Monday, we go over to Sister Alpha's house, her and her husband Michael, and they were Polish background. So it was a difficult Monday because they had Polish and Romanian Bible students meeting at their house. And so, if you, as you know, with the Jehovah's Witnesses, especially like on a Sunday when they do the Watchtower study, they'd read a paragraph. There's usually a designated question for that paragraph. The elder would ask the question, someone would raise their hand, and basically just read the paragraph over to answer the question. It wasn't that way with Bible students. We would read the paragraph, 1 or 2, or maybe more, maybe a whole section. We would look up all the scriptures, and there weren't any designed questions. It was usually, well, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you not agree? And brethren would give their thoughts. Sometimes the elder who was conducting the study might have questions and ask questions of those in attendance, and then we would discuss it. It was pretty much an open, a round table discussion on anything that we would study. The only problem with Monday was because the study was in English, but then the Polish and Romanian brethren would be holding their volumes in their language. And if they had a question, you'd have a Polish person would ask a question. Sister Alpha, who spoke Polish and knew Romanian, would translate it into English and then translate it into Romanian, and that's usually how the meeting went. So we'd go through one paragraph and spend a whole hour and a half because of all the translating work, and it just got a little too much for us. But that's how that was. Tuesdays, we were with the JWs. It was the book study. In those days, we had book studies in individual homes, and the book study was at our house. So the friends would come over, and we would have the book study. Wednesday, we met with the Bible students in Jersey City class. And we'd have another volume study. I think we were studying at that time the Tabernacle Shadows. On Thursdays, we went back to the Kingdom Hall for the school and service meeting. And then on Fridays, we met with some of the friends in Jersey City and some other brethren. It was not an official study of the Jersey City class, but it was mostly Jersey City brethren. We met at Sister Diane and Michael Lucas's home, where we were doing a study on the book of Daniel, I believe it was. We just verse by verse discussion. And then on Saturdays, we would go out in field service with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then on Sunday, we do it all over again. So we had something going on every day of the week. And it was interesting because on Saturdays when we went out in field service, it got to a point where we felt uncomfortable placing current Watchtower literature with people at the door. So when we spoke to people at the door, we just came with our Bibles, and we just gave them a simple message of hope, and showed them scriptures and told them, you know what, better days are coming. And that was that. After working at the Dawn for a while, I remember Sister Alpha coming up to me and telling me, she's like, we have a list of people who have either subscribed to the magazines or have ordered literature within the New Jersey area, Jersey City, Bayonne, and other places close by. And then the class in Chicago also gets orders from people in New Jersey, and then they forward those names and addresses to us. So she asked me, she says, you think you might want to follow up on these individuals and see if there's any interest? And I said, sure, why not? And so that's what I did. So on Saturday mornings, after I went out with the friends in field service, the group would then kind of break up and go, well, I got a Bible study, I got a return visit, and then I would say, yeah, I got some return calls to make myself. And I'd either go by myself, or there was another brother, Bernard Saunders, who knew exactly what I was doing. He would come out with me. And I would ask him, I said, I don't want to get you in trouble, but you want to come? He's like, sure, why not? So he would come with me. And we would go visit certain people. To my surprise, we were walking down one street, I think it was Bergen Avenue, and there was these row of townhouses, and I saw this woman outside sweeping the sidewalk, and she's like, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm looking for, I forget the name, and she says, that's me. She goes, I go, oh, hi. I said, well, I'm a Bible student, and we understand that you have ordered and received literature from the Dawn and other Bible student groups, you've had several sets of the volumes, and we were just making a follow-up call and seeing how, if you have any questions and stuff. And she admitted to me that that they had an actual congregation, ecclesia, in her home. They met down in the basement, and I was like, oh, and apparently there was a pretty big class, and I said, oh, we weren't aware. I said, there is a class just 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from here. She goes, no, we're comfortable right where we are and doing things our own way. And I said, that's fine, and so I reported back to the brethren at the Dawn, and they said, that's not unusual. I mean, we don't, Bible students, unlike the Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't take roll call. We don't, within our own little groups, we know who's who, but we don't follow around and see, if there's a class here or a class there. There could be classes all over the place that we are unaware of, who don't really want to be a part of. They just want to function independently and study God's Word and sympathize with our views. And I'm like, cool. Yeah. That was interesting. After a while, I remember picking up a stack of tracts from the Dawn and Chicago, and I would keep them in my bag. And I remember one time we go on, I would take the group out in service, and I usually tried to work with my wife, but sometimes I would go out and I wasn't taking the group out, and the brother taking the lead would say, I want you to work with so and so, and he would break us up because you always work with your wife to do this, do that. We're like, fine. So I remember I had this young brother with me, and I had him knock on the door, and then I knocked on the door, and a woman came out, and I started talking to her about the last days, and 2 Timothy and whatnot, and telling her about the kingdom. And I was just sharing scriptures with her, and I said, well, it was nice talking to you. I said, do you mind if I leave you something to read? It's just a small little tract. And I go into my bag, and I'm digging through it, and I'm trying to hide it from this young brother, right? And I pull it out, right? And I kind of hide it, and I hand it to her, and I go, here you go. And he's looking at it like, So I said, you can read it in your spare time, and, And she's like, okay, thank you. And we left, and he says, what was that you gave her? I said, oh, it was a track. He goes, I've never seen that track before. I said, oh, it's an old one. I have a lot of old tracks that just kind of gathering dust, and I thought I'd get rid of it, And he was like, oh. He goes, what was the name? I said, something about the kingdom. But those were the kind of things that we did, I would say that this went on for 2 years. 2 years of meeting every single day and twice on Sundays. And the more we learned, the more we realized that where we were currently wasn't the truth. They had some truth, but it had been perverted by the leadership, and it just didn't make any sense. I can recall going door to door and meeting individuals who had the most, an almost perfect character, a character that would put me to shame, and I thought to myself, man, all they need is the truth and they'd be perfect, but they didn't want the truth. But they had that perfect character. They had a wonderful demeanor, and I figured, well, they'd be. I just couldn't see such a person dying, being destroyed at Armageddon because I offered them a shot at living forever on a paradise earth, and they said, no, thank you, and closed the door. Not interested. And that was a big one for me. I couldn't see a God of love doing something like that. And so when I first read the chapter on the permission of evil in the Divine Plan of the Ages, Volume 1, and I read about why God permitted evil and Judgment Day and whatnot, I thought to myself, this is it. This is the answer I've been searching for. This harmonizes with what I believe, but at the time, I couldn't really see it. And so it was a joy, to finally put the pieces together, because while I loved being with the Jehovah's Witnesses, let me tell you something. Unlike most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I have no animosity towards them. People think I do. Well, you got a YouTube channel, you got several websites, and you got a forum, and you gear it all towards Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm like, well, how's that any different from Jehovah's Witnesses reaching out to Catholics and Protestants and whoever else? Does that mean that they hate Catholics and Protestants? No, they just tried to share the truth. So if I'm a former Catholic, I'm going to try and talk to my Catholic friends. If I'm a Baptist, a Seventh-day Adventist, or whatever the case, I'm going to try to reach out to them. Most people who leave the Jehovah's Witnesses become atheists, don't want anything to do with religion. I still believed. I got to a point where I became spiritually stagnant as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And there are some very lovely people that I've met while with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Most of them just kind of went through the motions. Some of them believed it hook, line, and sinker. Others were there simply because, unfortunately, they had a power trip. Where else could someone who's not educated, comes from the streets, could learn a few scriptures, accept what's told to them by a group of men, and said, this is what you have to teach because we are God's faithful and discreet slave class. And if you do good, if you follow our orders, we'll reward you. You become a servant, you become an elder, and you may, move up the ladder, so to speak. And so you have these people who are, elders and ministerial servants. They're circuit overseers, city overseers, and district overseers. Some go to Bethel, and they become so-called big shots, and they think they're high and mighty and important. But they fail to realize you make one little mistake, one little crisis of conscience, and that's all gone. And so, those are the things that happen. And so, for 2 years, that's what I did. I kept going back and forth. And it got to a point where I decided that I didn't want to go back and forth anymore. Now, my wife at the time, she was practically raised at JW. I think she started studying when she was about 10, 12, something like that. And got baptized. Her and her mom got baptized at the same time in 1975, the year of Armageddon. They were part of the French congregation. They were both Haitian. And And so, she told me that apparently they didn't make a big fuss about 1975. Apparently, it got lost in translation. So, and I think that's true of a lot of different language groups where things get lost in translation. Um, one 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 sister I met who was a circuit overseer's wife. They were out from California, I believe, and we were talking one time, making mental notes of each other and things, how things worked out there. And she said her exact words were, "The farther you are from Bethel, the freer you are." So that was that. Um, I had some good friends, people I hung out with. Um, Usually other couples that were our age. Um, but unfortunately, two of the brothers were striving to move up the corporate ladder, so to speak, at the Watchtower. And so so they were just basically doing what they were told. We were told later on. I remember one day, it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday evening. We got home. We were changing to attend the school and service meeting, and a sister called and spoke to my wife, and she said she she spoke to her, and then my wife hung up, and then she told me. She said, "So and so is getting disfellowshipped, and they're announcing it tonight." And I go, "Oh." I said, "But that's not why she called. She called to apologize because the elders had recruited her and her husband and this other couple to spy on us. They would invite themselves over to our house and kind of look around, look at our library and our books and stuff, and see if there was anything questionable." Um, I remember one sister coming to my house, and she saw a Bible that I had, and on the spine it had a cross on it because it was a Catholic Bible, and she was upset. She's like, "What are you doing with that? Got a pagan cross?" And I start laughing. I said, "I got that at Bethel, at the Bethel bookstore." "No, you didn't." I go, "Yes, I did." And so I pulled out the cost list, those little booklets that had all the publications available, and the list of the Bibles. And I go, "Here you go, right there. It's listed right here." And she looked at me like, I said, "Yeah, well, you think, the society sells all kinds of stuff that doesn't belong to them. They don't print all different Bible translations and concordances and whatnot. And but that's the way it was with a lot of witnesses. So I started thinking, and I go, yeah, I can see how, because I can remember when we were fellowshipping with them, they would ask us, all kinds of silly questions, like, "Well, what did you think of that Watchtower study, or the latest magazines, and wanted to see whether or not we would say anything negative about it." I think the only time I said anything negative was on a Thursday night during the service meeting. They had announced that we were going to be studying the Revelation, its grand climax at hand, again. We had studied it already 4 different times. And I remember going up to this one sister, and I said, "We're going to study that again? How many times do we have to study that book?" And she's like, "What's wrong with the book?" I said, "We've done it 4 times. Well, there are plenty of other books that we've published that, We haven't studied yet, but you know, that was about it there. But so after 2 years, my wife decided that she didn't really want to leave, only because her mom was a witness, and everyone she ever knew, she had other relatives, cousins, and whatnot who were witnesses, and or her friends, and her whole life was with the witnesses. She didn't really have worldly friends, unless you consider co-workers or um, kids that she grew up with in the neighborhood, who are now adults like she was. And I told her, I said, well, there's a way that we can do this. um, we lived with my mother-in-law in her house, and I told her, I said we can become inactive. And she's like, I said, yeah, we just stop going to the meetings, or attending meetings once in a while, just not become very, very active in them. I said, the worst that can happen is that they'll consider us spiritually weak for not attending the meetings, um, and that's that. But we'll still be Jehovah's Witnesses. We won't be disfellowshipped or formally disassociated, and you can still have a relationship with your mother. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna go tell her. So she runs off into the kitchen, and I hear them talking. And all of a sudden I hear my mother-in-law screaming at the top of her lungs. I mean, it was like a scene out of those Jesus movies, where the high priest just starts ripping off his clothes and wailing. It's really over exaggerated, but that's the kind of person she was. And then she rushes into the bedroom, and make a long story short, she said, why are you doing this to me? And because it was all about her, and how people would react to her, and said, why don't you leave and leave her with me, and you go off and you do what you want to do. And I said, no, wherever I go, my wife goes. And so at that point, she looked at my wife, and she's like, I want you out of my house. And so we went about looking for a place, and by the end of the week, we had found a place. It was 50 miles away from where we were currently located. And we made the down payment for the apartment, and we relocated. Bought some furniture, living room set and whatnot, and that was the end of that. My wife at the time gave her mother our phone number and said, "This is our phone number. This is just for you. Don't give it to anyone else. Don't give it to the witnesses. Don't give it to the elders. And you need us for anything, we'll be here." And so first thing she does is she gives it to the elders. She gave it to the French elders who knew her from when she was a little girl, and they were calling the apartment, And I don't speak French, but I can just hear them yap 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 yap, and she would translate to me and tell me what was happening. But I remember the elders. Terrence White. He was a Bethelite and an elder in the congregation, and Steve Hart was the other elder. Steve Hart presented himself very well dressed. He was the school overseer, good-looking guy, and last I heard, he had been disfellowshipped. a lot of the people that I knew within the Jehovah's Witnesses had been disfellowshipped, or who had left, or just become inactive and just kind of faded. Um, some of the, like the other two couples, I found recently, this is some 20 years later, I I ran into them on social media. And I go, oh, look at that. And I started going through their social media. A lot of them had their social media accounts public. So I was able to see all kinds of pictures and whatnot, and see who their friends were. And I go, oh, I remember this brother. I remember this sister. And, so I had two close friends in New York, Carlos and Ivan. Carlos had been disfellowshipped. Looking at his profile on Facebook, it was hard to determine whether or not he was an active JW. I reached out to him, but never reached back. Then I found Ivan. Ivan, towards the end when I was leaving, he was already being sucked into that place. They were trying to get him to go to Bethel and whatnot, and the witnesses was his life, and that was that. He never reached out to me either. I found my friend Bernard, but I reached out to him, but not sure if he's still active or what's going on in his life. But everyone else, they're still with the witnesses, and I think for the most part, I'm not even sure if they actually believe it. I mean, since I left, there have been so many changes that it's not even the same religion that I had joined. The thing that drew me to them is no longer truth. It's old light. It's error. I mean, other than your basics, no Trinity, no hellfire, no immortal soul, and the kingdom, everything else has changed. And so, what's truth today may not be truth tomorrow. And within the last few years, the last year especially, they've made so many changes, both organizationally and doctrinally. It's amazing. And I dialogue with witnesses all the time online and all the social media and online forums and whatnot, and they always have excuses, and it's just new light, and they'll quote the scriptures, and they I've met some who are really, really smart and know their scriptures and know what they believe and why they believe, and they get into the whole Hebrew and Greek. This isn't just going on jw.org and copying certain paragraphs and then pasting them to me. These are people who can really think, and there are times when I'll make a point to them and it's kind of like silence, and they're thinking about it, but then, which is common among Jehovah's Witnesses, once you kind of stump them, and it's not like I'm trying to stump them, I'm just trying to get a dialogue with them and say, well, what do you think about this? Or this is how I see it. And they're just kind of like, if they can't refute it, or if it makes too much sense, they'll usually just overlook it, not even deal with it. They'll just kind of change the subject. And, that's usually how it is there. So, so we left. We dedicated our whole time to the Jersey City Bible students there. I was with them for quite some time. I don't know, maybe more than 10 years. And my wife at the time decided that she wanted to get baptized. And so she got baptized in 94. And that was probably a couple of years after we left. I think we left officially, we walked out about 92. I had made my consecration in 1990 while we were still with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But I didn't feel that I needed to get rebaptized. But she wanted to get baptized again. She wanted to wash, as you say, wanted to wash the Jehovah's Witnesses off of her. So I told her, I said, you know what? I'll do it with you. By then, it was funny because here I am getting baptized, and I was already a deacon with the Jersey City class. That's a ministerial servant. So I got baptized, and and then a little while later, I don't remember exactly what year it was. They made me, they appointed me an elder in the class, and so there were three of us who were elders. There was myself, and there was Bernd Eckholt, and then there was Raymond Luke, who was he was awesome, and he was like a father to me, and I loved him very much. I still do. He passed away some years ago, and I'm not a very emotional person, but I remember we used to go to their house. They would invite us over on Thanksgiving. We'd go over there, and they'd have a big bash there. Sometimes we'd go over to the house on Christmas, or on New Year's. We would go over there. We'd have these meetings. I remember, when I was at JW, and the friends would say, hey, when you come over to the house after the meeting, we're going to have a gathering, And I'd be like, cool. So I'd go over there, and, Jeff would have gone down to Newark, and where the big fish market was, and he loved lobster and crabs and stuff like that, and and he would have this big display and spend a couple $100 on all kinds of stuff, and there'd be like all kinds of beer and stuff, and the place would be packed outside and inside, and we're just sitting around eating and drinking and laughing and having a good old time. And then I would get home, and my wife would smell me a mile away because I would smell like fish, But the first time when I was at the Bible students, and they go, hey, we're having a gathering at our house, why don't you come over? And I thought, okay. And I'm expecting, barbecue and whatever the case may be. And we get out there, and to them a gathering was getting together and having a Bible study. And I thought to myself, boy, these people really do live the Bible. I mean, it's their life. And it eventually crept into my life, where everything I did was strictly for the Lord. And when I became an elder with the Jersey City class, I eventually began to make my rounds as people got to know me. And my wife and I would travel, usually around the tri or quad state area, which was basically anywhere within New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Eventually we branched out to Indiana and Yeah, I think that was as far as we went. Um, and the friends got to know me, and so for those of you who are not Bible students and are either affiliated with the Jehovah's Witnesses in one way or another, whether you're active or inactive, um, as you know, Bible students do not have a central headquarters, unlike the Watchtower. Jehovah's Witnesses have the Watchtower, and they have their governing body. Um, when I was in, there was a there was a governing body, um, but there was also the faithful and discreet slave class, which was said to be made up of all those who profess to be anointed. Um, the the governing body were basically the board of directors of the Watchtower, and all that has changed shortly after I left. But with the Bible students, it's not that way. You have to remember too that in Brother Russell's time, there was no the Watchtower was not the central headquarters for the Bible students. It wasn't our Vatican, so to speak. Um, the Watchtower was a publishing house. Brother Russell said it's just a business. It's a tool that we use to promote the truth as we see it. Publish a magazine, books, booklets, tracts, and whatever else. It also organized conventions. And but while and well, let's put it this way: every congregation, every Bible student congregation in Brother Russell's time, even as it is today, were independent congregations. So you formed a class, you went through the scriptures on the qualifications of an elder and a deacon. You found the brethren in that class would find those in their class who met those requirements. And then by a raising of the hand, they would vote. Somebody would nominate them, someone would second it, their name would be put in the hopper, so to speak, and then a week later they'd come back for the actual election. The names would be read, brother so and so, and all in favor, and it was usually a 75% of the class had to approve that particular person for that office. And in Brother Russell's time, it wasn't unusual for the 1,500 or so congregations around the world, when they had their end of the year business meetings. They usually have them quarterly, but the last one was usually where they have their nominations and election. They would automatically elect Brother Russell as an honorary elder in the class. So, meaning that they would study his writings and hold him in high esteem as far as their teacher, being their teacher. That didn't mean that they had to agree with everything Brother Russell said, because there were Bible students who didn't agree with everything Brother Russell said. Even some very prominent ones in Brother Russell's time, who would tell Brother Russell, I don't really see it this way. And Brother Russell says, okay, just, if they were what we call a co-porter, which was equivalent, I guess, today of a circuit overseer or district overseer, or pilgrims, I think it was called, pilgrim services. A co-porter was what the witnesses call pioneers. A pilgrim was a special representative of the society. Brother Russell says, if you don't believe it, or you still haven't made it your own, so to speak, you're still trying to weigh it out, he goes, then don't teach it from the platform. I don't want you teaching anything that you personally, don't believe or don't really fully understand. So He says, just put it on the shelf. It may come to you later on. And that was that. That was the freedom that the brethren had in those days. So some years, a class would elect Brother Russell as an elder, and then some years he wasn't, and that was their right. But I think overall the overall majority had elected Brother Russell as an elder in the class. That doesn't mean that he can just walk into any class and dictate to them what they had to do. Brother Russell never dictated what they should and shouldn't do. He says, "This is how we understand it. Here's a meal. This is what I'm feeding you. This is what the Lord has, revealed through me, through my study of His Word. This is how I see it. Sometimes he would make some adjustments. They weren't major adjustments. They weren't like a full circle or just an about face. But sometimes he would make some adjustments, some clarification. And it was up to the brethren whether or not they wanted to. For instance, the brethren who eventually went off and started the Dawn Bible Students back in what became the Dawn Bible Students in 1932. It started out in 1928, and then it evolved from a radio show to the Dawn Publishers. And then when they moved to New Jersey, they went from being Dawn Publishers in Brooklyn to Dawn Bible Students Association. They had an issue with Brother Russell's view on justification. He had introduced this new view. It was more of a clarification of how he saw things. And the ones who started the Dawn didn't quite see it that way. There was some in the Dawn who did see it Brother Russell's way, but others who didn't. And so when the opportunity came for them to republish the volumes, Volume 6, which was the New Creation, had Russell's view on what is called tentative justification. The Dawn decided that they weren't in harmony with tentative justification, and so they would publish an earlier version of Volume 6 that did not have tentative justification in it. So later on, they had their different views on chronology and other prophetic issues, and they took the same view of the presence that the Jehovah's Witnesses believe. We can get into that in a later episode. But it just goes to show that there are all Bible students don't see everything eye to eye. It's been said that Bible students agree on 95% of what we call the divine plan, but they love to argue over the 5% that they don't agree on. I think it's a little bit more than 5%, but hey, who am I? So when after Brother Russell's death, of course, things kind of fell apart. Now, if you're really interested in learning about those early years, there is a YouTube channel which is eventually coming to an end, called Watchtower History, and it's done by my good friend Brother Jeff Meserer, and so he put together this YouTube channel where they go over the whole history, and they get into what happened after Brother Russell's death and whatnot. And he's putting out a book right now. Should be going to the publishers, about the life of Judge Rutherford. Very interesting stuff. So if you get a chance, you can go and subscribe to his channel and listen to other neat stuff that's very well documented. And I'll let you in a little secret. A lot of the documents that they came from me, but he doesn't tell anybody that, so don't worry about it. It's just between you and me. So, when the changes came about after Brother Russell's death, there was a lot of confusion, as you all know, and the independent classes of Bible students eventually decided that they weren't in harmony with these new changes doctrinally and organizationally, and so many were not supporting the society. Oh, they still read the Watchtower magazines, and the society was still publishing the studies in the scriptures and other stuff. But then, later on throughout the 20s, and by the end of 1930 and stuff, the organization had completely changed. And Judge Rutherford admits that a good 75% of the original Bible students had defected from the society. And so, they just abandoned the society and decided to function independently. And so various organizations had been established, both here in the United States and abroad. You had the Paul Johnson from Philadelphia started the Layman's Home Missionary Movement. Now that was a name that Brother Russell often used. So if you ever have any of these old Bible student monthlies, this large 4-page tracts that Bible students will hand out in front of churches on Sundays, on the inside it would say published by the Layman's Home Missionary Movement. But it was not incorporated, so Johnson could eventually take the name and use it. The layman still exists. Now, Paul Johnson died in 1950, and then Raymond Jolly took over. He was also from Brother Russell's time. He was a pilgrim for the society. And Paul Johnson believed that the door was closed, and by door I mean the door to heaven, that there was no more spirit begettal, and the door was closed in 1914, even though Brother Russell lived until 1916. But so he wrote, if you look behind me, you see those red books here? Yeah, those are all his writings. That's Paul Johnson's writings. He originally wanted to publish 22 volumes. He died before he could finish, I think, the 15th. And so the other writings, I think there were 2 other volumes that were published after his death. So they were published posthumous, kind of like Russell's, so-called the 7th volume, The Finished Mystery. And it was taken from his notes that he had. But he originally planned 22 volumes. The last 2 volumes, I believe, were going to be a commentary on Revelation, which the layman claimed he never did. But there are some who say that he actually did have them done, but they won't publish it for some reason. The 4 ousted directors, along with some other prominent Bible students, in 1918 formed the Pastoral Bible Institute. And of course, it's interesting because both the PBI, as they're known for today, that most people just call them the Herald. They published the magazine, The Herald of Christ's Kingdom. They were just right around the corner from the society, and they were there for quite some time in Brooklyn. Finally, they left, so there were other groups that were formed, especially around the world, in the UK and Australia, and um, you know, wherever there were Bible students, there were splits, so to speak. Um, some classes decided that when Brother Russell died, so did the work, and so they sat around and did nothing. Other classes felt that when Brother Russell died, there was no longer any need for an organization, and so they did not. And the Jersey City class was one of those classes that decided that they would just function independently. So they didn't, while they used the publications that were offered. For instance, when the Dawn started publishing the volumes, well, the Jersey City class would then, get the volumes from the Dawn, But none of the elders in the class became members of the Dawn. I remember Ray Luke said, they would always ask me, and, I supported them, in the work that they were doing. I didn't always agree with everything they did and said and taught, but, I supported them. But I didn't want to be a member. I didn't want to be a part of an organization. I wanted to serve the Lord on my own and, do my own thing. So that's basically how it was in those days. So as time went by, the Bible students, of course, kind of fractured out and functioned independently and did their own thing. And Judge Rutherford eventually organized his people in 1931, changed their name to Jehovah's Witnesses, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I'm here to tell you that Bible students are not perfect. We're human. We have the same frailties and faults that everybody else has. And so, yeah, every class is different. You have some classes that are liberal in their views on things. You have some classes that are very, very conservative. And then you have those classes that are kind of like somewhere in the middle. You might have a class that the members are have different views on certain things. They'll all agree on the basics, but they might have different views on things. And, I think it's important to remember that there is only one call in the scriptures. The Lord doesn't call anybody to come and live on a paradise earth. That's not to say that people aren't going to live on a restored earth. It just means that the call is not for that purpose. The call is to, as the scriptures say, call out a people for his name. And these are people who are going to be joint heirs with our Lord Jesus. And these individuals, along with Jesus, are going to help restore mankind to the way things were prior to the fall in the garden. And so, with that in mind, you're going to run into a lot of different people. And I have met in my travels certain individuals among the Bible students who came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses for various reasons and from various time frames, so to speak. Some came out in the 40s, some came out in the 50s and 60s. I know a few who came out in the 70s. When I started my ministry, when the internet first came out in the 90s, I had the first Bible student website. I remember talking to the brethren. I said, hey, you can do great witness work. And they're like, they weren't really interested. So I remember I had the first Bible student website on AOL, America Online. And I was witnessing to everybody, and I'd find JWs and stuff. Then, of course, as time went by, you had, domain names, and you can, start your own websites and whatnot. And it started catching on with some of the brethren. I remember New Brunswick had a website, and then Chicago came out with a website. Eventually, the Dawn and the Herald came out with websites, and then various smaller congregations started putting together websites and making their presence known. And as things started to get shaken up in the society, things like the United Nations and things that happened after I left, this shook up a lot of the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they started searching. And I get a lot of contact, and they go, I didn't know you guys were still around. In those days they couldn't see me, so we were just typing words, and they're like, how old are you? Thinking that I'd be like 129 or something, and I go, no, we're still around. The rumors of our demise has been greatly exaggerated. We're still around. We may not be in the millions, but and I tried to explain, as I mentioned earlier, there's only one call, and that call is to be a part of the little flock. And when that number is complete, then things will get rolling for the kingdom to be established. And the kingdom is basically a takeover. It isn't quite what the witnesses believe, that Jehovah's just going to come in and just willy-nilly just destroy everybody and everything, and the only ones that will survive will be Jehovah's Witnesses, and maybe a few people who didn't know any better. But for the most part, the good majority would be dead. And we're like, no, this is going to be kind of like a gradual takeover. The kingdom will, as everything God does, when you look in the scriptures, it's always never like, boom, it happens. It's always a process, and that's how we see the kingdom being established. And the kingdom is being established right before our very eyes. You may not see it, but it is. The tearing down of this system is all part of the kingdom being established. That's the first part. So, we have that coming right now. So, there are some brethren who have predicted dates. Brethren love to speculate, and so they have been. Not by any particular organization like the Dawn or the PBI or anything like that, but there have been members in certain classes, and they might be elders or just a brother, and says, I think I got it, and come up with certain dates. One of the first changes that were made was from the PBI. There was a brother Streeter, who died in the early 20s, I think 24, and he put out a series of articles that were published in book form. One was a commentary on Daniel, Daniel, the Beloved of Jehovah, I think it was called, and then there was a 2-volume set on Revelation. The revelation of Jesus Christ. But in the Daniel book, he didn't take the 607 date, he took the 587 date and came up with 1934 as the ending of the Gentile times. And of course, nothing really happened in 1934, and he didn't live to see it. Nothing happening in 1934. And then there were others who believed things were going to happen in the 40s and then in the 50s, um, and with the nation of Israel coming about 1948. So it's very easy to just take, well, a generation could be 70 or 80 years, and just start, starting it at a certain prominent date and coming up, well, um, the Lord returned in 1874, or the Gentile times ended in 1914. So we can add 70 years, and what do we get? We get, 1984, or maybe 1994, and so maybe we can, add it to this year, or maybe it's the generation who saw 1948, and we had, years to that, and there's one brother out in California who's got 2034, and I think someone else has 2043, and but these aren't, official beliefs by the brotherhood as a whole. It's just individuals here and there who just unfortunately have nothing better to do than to play the numbers game. And that's kind of sad, because when the Lord calls you, He doesn't tell you, I need you to make your calling election sure by 1934 or 2034, or whatever the case may be, whatever year is out there. It's He who is faithful unto death. I will grant them the crown of life, and grant them to sit at my side. And so there are all kinds of different views among Bible students. Does that mean that, well, you don't have the truth? You have all kinds of ideas, and the Jehovah's Witnesses wear uniform. We believe the same thing wherever country you go to. And yeah, that's only because that's what your leaders tell you. This is what you have to believe, and you can't deviate from that belief, or face the penalty of being, disfellowshipped or disciplined for whatever reason. And in recent years, the governing body has really, hammered that view that they are Jesus' brothers, and the Lord has appointed them, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and it's really opening up the minds of quite a few who are in there. And now you have this term called PIMO, physically in, mentally out, or you have the PIMI, those who are physically in and mentally in, so, and some wonder whether or not the society is going to last any much longer. But I think, honestly, there'll always be a Watchtower. I think there'll always be Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, if you go online, you'll find all kinds of different Jehovah's Witnesses who believe that the Watchtower has apostatized, and that Jehovah's Witnesses are God's people, and they've usurped the authority of the nation of Israel. So yeah, you got a lot of different views out there, and you have to. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that when the Lord calls you, He calls you, okay? He might call you through an individual. He may call you through an affiliation with a particular church or Bible study group. But in the end, your salvation is not hinged on who you associate with. And by that I mean, I consider myself a Bible student. I am in harmony with the teachings and the writings of Charles Taze Russell. That said, Charles Taze Russell is not my Savior. He's not going to give me everlasting life or immortality, Being affiliated with a Bible student congregation does not give me salvation, immortality, or everlasting life. My salvation is hinged on one person and one person only, and that is my personal relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Okay, so um, it doesn't matter who you're affiliated with, um, because an organization, an individual, a group of individuals cannot give you salvation. They might be able to point you the way to salvation, but the rest is up to you and your relationship with Jesus and with your Heavenly Father. So that's kind of where we stand now. Bible students around the world are gathering together in various places, depending on the size. It could be meeting in homes, meeting in a rented hall, studying the scriptures, studying volumes, studying whatever they want, trying to build a Christ-like character, because we have to be made in the image of our Lord, and eventually have that perfect love that He had. That's what we're striving to be. To be faithful and make our, what the scriptures call, our calling and election sure. The Lord has called us, and that's what we're striving to do. As I said, we're not perfect. Sometimes we rub each other the wrong way, just like in any family, whether it be our fleshly brothers and sisters, even within our spiritual brothers and sisters. We might butt heads. Things can be said, but there are ways to rectify those things. Matthew 18, about you have an issue with your brother, you sit down with them, try to work it out, at various conventions, like at the general conventions that are held right now, they're held up in Pennsylvania, usually in July. They'll usually have panel discussions, and it's usually a topic that's controversial in some way, meaning that there are multiple views. So they'll usually have two elders who have opposite views, and they'll give their thoughts. It's not to change anyone's mind. They say, well, this is what I believe in. This is why I believe in. This is why I believe it, And, sometimes people in the audience might go, oh, I never thought of it that way, But that's how it is. As far as how Bible students kind of function, like I said, every class is different. When I was with the Jersey City class, we predominantly studied the volumes. Our schedule was the first Sunday of every month was a public discourse and what we call a testimony meeting. And the rest of the Sundays was usually a double study. On Wednesday nights, we had a study and we had a testimony meeting. And when we got towards memorial time, we might put our studies on hold and do a study on the memorial. So we'll look into types and antitypes. We'll go into the Old Testament and what led up to the memorial. That was Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and the blood on the doorposts and whatnot, and Jesus and instituting the Last Supper and things of that nature. And, when I moved around to other classes, they did things differently. Some of them might pick an article from Brother Russell from the old Watchtowers. The class I'm with now, out here in Indiana, Um, we have right now we have 3 different studies, 2 on Sundays and 1 on Wednesdays. So on on Wednesday evenings we have what we call a character development study. So the fruitages of the Spirit, and we study scriptures, and from a book that was a compilation of Brother Russell's writings on those, and everybody has a part. So elders don't really have to do much. Chair the meeting. Certain people in the class have a question, you know, and they prepare a little presentation, and started the meeting. They give their presentation based on the question, and then there's a discussion, and then we move on to the next presentation. On Sundays, our first study is actually a Bible study. And you can bring whatever you want to the table. Different translations, different commentaries, your own thoughts, whatever. And right now we're doing the Minor Prophets. So we just started Hosea. And eventually we'll go all the way up to Malachi. The second study is a study in the 5th volume, which is the atonement between God and man, which deals with the atonement of Jesus and what it means. And eventually we'll get into things like the issue of the Trinity, and is Jesus God, and whatnot. No, Bible students are not Trinitarians, but there's a few studies on the issues of how people look at certain scriptures and say, see, this is proof that Jesus is God. A congregation may decide that, or an ecclesia may decide that they want to put together a convention. So unlike in Brother Russell's day, or like with the Jehovah's Witnesses, where the society puts together these conventions, it's not that way with Bible students. Now, the Dawn, as a publishing house, does sponsor a convention. They call it the General Convention. And it's probably the biggest conventions among Bible students in America. There is an international convention that's usually held in Poland or Romania, and that goes into the thousands, 3,000-4,000 at times. And so in America, so the Dawn puts out the General Convention, and when I attended back in the day, it used to be 400 or 500 attended. And for me, that's a lot. But coming out of the JWs, that was like the size of a congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. So we do things on a much smaller scale. There were other classes, other groups like the PBI at the time used to put together their own conventions. They don't do it anymore. They just publish the journal and some booklets, and they do other things. So an ecclesia may decide to publish put together a convention, like the class that I'm with puts together a convention every year. It's a 2-day convention. So most classes will put together conventions. Usually it could be a 1-day convention, it could be a 2-day convention. I think the Dawn's General Convention is 4 days. And invite speakers from all over to come and serve them. Conventions could be come as you are type deal, where we're inviting you to serve our convention, and you can come and speak on whatever you want. Other times a convention might have a theme, like in my class that I'm with, we put together a theme. It could be prophecy, it could be maybe a particular book of the scriptures, it could be a particular topic, the presence, the ransom, could be, anything. And then we'll invite speakers and let them know this is what we want to speak on. And then we'll have like a kind of like a question meeting or panel discussion where things that were left unsaid can be discussed, and then they'll take questions from the audience. So things like that. And when I was with the Jersey City class, we did things. There was one thing we used to have a what we called a 4 ecclesia question meeting. An ecclesia, as you may know, it's a congregation, it's a class. And so there were 4 classes: Jersey City, New Brunswick, Patterson, and I think it was there was a class in New York. The name of the class escapes me. So we would meet every 6 months, and each class would submit a question, so that by the end of the year, every class would have had submitted one question. So every 6 months, we'd have 2 questions from 2 different classes. So the question would be put together. We would set a date and the location, and then we would get together, and the question would be then submitted to the brothers, and we get together on a Sunday, and we would make it kind of like a mini convention, and then an elder from each class. So it would be an elder from all 4 classes, even though there's 2 questions, one from 2 different classes that would be asked. And each elder would go up there and have like a 15-minute presentation of what he thought, how to answer the question. And then after everyone had their say, then the best part came about. Questions from the audience, because you just never know what you may have said that may perk someone's ear and they start asking you questions. So you really need to be prepared. And we did that. That was the only area that I remember the class doing that. In all the other classes I've been to, it's never been done. So, then there are other classes that are very, very active. You have classes like, New Brunswick was a class that folded a couple of years ago, maybe within the last 2 years, I think. They were in New Jersey, and they published the volumes and a slew of booklets on various topics. Very, very active class, published a newsletter. But eventually everyone kind of, at least the elders, kind of died off. They got up there in age, and they had to close their doors. Chicago is probably one of the biggest of the republishing groups. They've republished the original Watchtowers and all of Brother Russell's books, and they publish their own stuff and newsletters and booklets and DVDs and videos and software and all kinds of stuff. So there's something for everybody among the brethren. There are other types of classes. Out in Illinois, there's a group of what we call the New Covenant group. For those who are not familiar, there was a split in the movement back in 1909 over the issue of the New Covenant and a few other issues that Brother Russell had introduced. And so they split off and started their own thing. In those days, they believed everything Brother Russell taught until 1909. And then, boom, that was it. But as time went by, they've made some other changes and modifications, and they don't, for the most part, use Brother Russell. He's basically a footnote when they talk about their history, um, but they don't study his writings or anything like that. They're I guess you can say they're kind of nominal in that sense. Um, you get together, it's like going to a nominal church. You go to church on Sunday, you hear a nice little sermon, and that's that. They they'll have they have their own building, their own church, and they have Sunday school classes for the kids and all kinds of things, and they put together this yearly convention, and but sometimes they'll even invite you know conservative or other types of Bible students to serve at their conventions, and you know Bible students for the most part are like, hey, someone's going to invite me to speak, I'm going to speak, even though I may not always agree on everything that they believe, but that's usually how it is, and um, it's 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 been quite a ride, so to speak, but I wouldn't change anything. Um, I wouldn't change anything. I'm, for the most part, content. You know, relocated out here into Indiana, and I have since remarried, and my wife is a consecrated Bible student, and we do our best to help each other grow in the Lord, and I serve as a local elder in the class, and we have our meetings and our studies, and I still do whatever work I can on in witnessing, kind of like this YouTube channel and the website, which is Food for Thinking Jehovah's Witnesses, which is food number 4 jws.com. There's Bible Students Forum, which is for the most part dead because people don't use forums anymore. There was a time when I had something like 800 people on there, and now nobody comes. So I've shut it down, and I put it back up again, and I shut it down again, and I put it back up again, and but there's usually no interaction. Most people have gone now into the what we call the social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the other stuff to dialogue. There are some forums online, ex-Jehovah's Witness forums and places like that, and all they do is sit around and complain about the Watchtower, and some who have been gone for 20, 30 years, and it's sad because the hurt is still there after all that time, and when you talk to them, it's like it happened yesterday. They haven't gotten over it, and it just kind of like consumes them, and that's kind of sad. But I think that's about it now. It's been over an hour and a half, and I think in future episodes of my testimony, I'll just kind of talk about funny experiences that I've had, both within the Jehovah's Witnesses and among the Bible students, and make comparisons and stuff. It's fun. I really enjoy what I do, and talking to people, and relating to them, my experiences. And as I've stated, I have no animosity towards the Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't hate them. I love them, as I do all people. I just feel more of a kinship with them, which is why I try to reach out to them and get them to think. Now, I'm one of these individuals that if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you are happy with them, you believe it's the truth, and nothing's going to change your mind, and you're not looking for anything else, then fine. You know what? Stay where you are. And there are witnesses that I've known who, for the most part, are better off staying as a Jehovah's Witness because they have stability. They need that. They need that structure to keep them on the so-called straight and narrow. Because if they didn't have that structure, they'd be out there in the world doing God knows what. But if you're one of these Jehovah's Witnesses, these so-called PMOs, physically and mentally out, searching, looking for something more spiritual, something that's going to help you grow and draw closer to God, then why not give the Bible students a chance? There's something for everybody among the Bible students. And if there's no class near you, not a problem. We got plenty of Zoom meetings and studies going around all over the world. So, there are people who contact me and say, are there any Bible students near me? And there might be one or two. There might be a class. Sometimes there isn't a class by them. I go, no, but there's a brother or a sister that lives out there. Maybe, I can give them your information. They can reach out to you. And sometimes they'll have conversations over the phone. Now we have the computer and we have Zoom meetings. So, I can guarantee you that every day of the week, somewhere in the world, in English and in whatever other languages you may need, there are brethren, Bible students, who are gathering together and having studies. And it gets to a point where it's not a matter of being spoon-fed and this is what we believe, let's read the paragraph and answer the questions. It's, okay, let's read this paragraph. Let's look at these scriptures. What do you think? And if you have your own idea, fine. Just tell them what you think. And then there's a discussion. So that's how we grow. We grow in Christ. We grow to know each other. We know to learn God's plans and purposes. And in the end, it's up, it's your relationship with our Heavenly Father. It's not your relationship with me or anybody else. It's that counts. So that's that. So we're going to wrap it up here. And the next few episodes are going to deal more with not so much this, but going back to the basics of the truth and how we see certain topics. And perhaps later on I'll work on some other things. I have some really funny experiences that I had with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Some funny in the sense that they were funny, haha funny, and then others that were kind of sad, but hey, there are some funny things and sad things even as a Bible student. So like I said, we're not perfect and we never claim to be, so but we're all striving for the same thing, to serve the Lord the best that we can with what we have. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. We want more content like this. Subscribe. Leave a comment below if you want. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so. I think there's on the information down here somewhere, there are contacts that you can get, if you want to contact me or you want to go to the website. If you go to the kingdomherald.com website or biblestudents.net, it all takes you to the same place. You can go to the links page and it links to every Bible student group that I'm aware of online. And you can read all the different content that they put out. Because in the end, it's up to you to make the truth your own. I can't do that for you. So, Lord bless, and until we meet again, have a good one. Let's see if I can remember how to turn this off. Oh, there it is, right there.